From the millionaire's scorn to the world stage, Beatric's unstoppable rise. Beatric, a young woman with a heart full of dreams and a voice that could move mountains, lives a life defined by hardship. Struggling alongside her mother in a small, run-down home, Beatric spends her days cleaning houses to make ends meet. Despite her challenges, she clings to her passion for music, finding solace in singing after long, grueling hours of work. Her voice, raw and beautiful, is her only escape from a world that constantly reminds her of her place at the bottom. But fate takes an unexpected turn when Beatric and her mother are hired to clean the grand estate of Andrew Collins, a wealthy businessman with a cold demeanor and a deep disdain for those he deems beneath him. When Beatric's extraordinary talent is accidentally revealed, it sets off a chain of events that pits her dreams against the cruelty of privilege and prejudice. What happens when a girl with nothing but her voice and resilience is thrust into a world of mockery, power, and unexpected opportunity? Will her passion be enough to shatter the barriers set before her? Dive into this compelling story of grit, dreams, and redemption to find out. The dim light of dawn filtered through the threadbare curtains of a small, cluttered room. Beatric sat on the edge of her creaky bed, brushing her long, dark hair as she listened to the familiar hum of her mother cooking in the tiny kitchen. The smell of reheated porridge filled the air, but it wasn't enough to mask the scent of detergent clinging to her hands from the previous day's work. Beatric was 20 years old, yet her face carried the weight of someone much older. Her almond-shaped eyes, framed by tired shadows, still held a spark of determination. Her hands, rough and calloused, moved with a quiet precision as she tied her apron, a faded piece of fabric that had seen better days. Today was just another day cleaning houses for strangers who rarely acknowledged her existence. "Beatric, eat something before you go," her mother called, her voice gentle but firm. "I will, Mama," Beatric replied, forcing a small smile. She didn't want her mother to worry, even though her stomach churned from exhaustion rather than hunger. As she walked to work, the city buzzed around her. The towering skyscrapers gleamed in the sunlight, casting long shadows over the narrow streets where vendors called out their wares. Beatric's world, however, felt distant from this bustling life. She walked with her head down, clutching the strap of her worn-out bag, her thoughts drifting to her one solace, music. Beatric's love for singing was no secret to her mother. On rare evenings when they both had a moment to rest, Beatric would hum softly, filling their home with a warmth that no amount of money could buy. Her voice, rich and full of emotion, had the power to transform their bleak surroundings into something magical. But dreams of a music career seemed impossible when every penny she earned went to bills and basic necessities. That morning, Beatric arrived at her latest job, a sprawling estate owned by the wealthy and elusive Andrew Collins. The grand mansion stood like a fortress, its marble columns and pristine gardens a stark contrast to Beatric's modest life. She paused at the ornate iron gate, adjusting her apron before stepping inside. The housekeeper, an older woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, met her at the door. "You'll be working in the East Wing today," she said curtly, handing Beatric a list of tasks. "Mr. Collins doesn't like noise, so keep to yourself and do your job quietly." "Yes, ma'am," Beatric replied, bowing her head. The East Wing was a cavernous space, lined with bookshelves and decorated with art that must have cost more than her family earned in a decade. As she dusted the shelves, her gaze fell on a grand piano in the corner of the room. It gleamed under the soft light, its black surface polished to perfection. Her heart raced. She had never been this close to such an instrument before. Back in her neighborhood, the only music she had was her own voice and the occasional crackling radio. Unable to resist, she approached the piano, her fingers hovering above the keys. "Just one note," she whispered to herself. Pressing a single key, the sound resonated through the room, rich and haunting. Her chest tightened with a mix of awe and longing. As Beatric continued her chores, Andrew Collins arrived home. He was a tall man in his late 30s, with sharp features and an air of authority. His tailored suit and polished shoes exuded wealth, but his expression was cold and detached. The staff quickly scattered at his arrival, avoiding his piercing gaze. Andrew was used to people tiptoeing around him. He liked it that way. It gave him a sense of control, of power. But as he passed the library, he heard something unexpected, a soft, melodic voice accompanied by the faint notes of the piano. He stopped in his tracks. Peering through the slightly ajar door, Andrew saw Beatric. Her back was to him, her hands moving tentatively over the keys as she sang. Her voice filled the room with a raw, heartfelt emotion that stirred something deep within him, a feeling he couldn't quite place. "Who gave you permission to touch that?" he barked, stepping into the room. Beatric froze, her hands dropping from the keys. She turned to face him, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, sir," she stammered. "I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to. That piano is worth more than your entire life." Andrew's voice was icy, his words cutting like a knife. I was just," Beatric began, but Andrew raised a hand to silence her. "Get back to work," he said curtly, his gaze narrowing as he walked away. But even as he left, the sound of her voice lingered in his mind, haunting him in a way he didn't expect. Beatric finished her shift in silence, her heart heavy with shame. As she walked home, she tried to push the encounter out of her mind, but the sting of Andrew's words lingered. Yet, beneath the hurt, a small ember of determination began to burn. If her voice could catch the attention of someone like Andrew Collins, maybe, just maybe, it was worth more than she realized. That night, as Beatric lay in bed, she hummed softly to herself. The melody was bittersweet, a reflection of her struggles and her dreams. She didn't know what the future held, but she made a silent vow: she would not let anyone, not even a man as powerful as Andrew Collins, extinguish her passion for music. And so, the seeds of a life-changing journey were planted. The next morning, Beatric prepared herself for another long day at the Collins estate. The biting chill of the early hours did little to shake off the unease lingering from her encounter with Andrew Collins. His harsh words still echoed in her mind, but Beatric refused to let them break her spirit. She had grown used to judgment and prejudice, they were constant companions in her world. As she entered the grand estate, the air inside was tense. The housekeeper handed her a new set of tasks for the day without a word. Beatric noticed the slight stiffness in the older woman's demeanor, as though she was walking on eggshells. It seemed Andrew's temper had left its mark on more than just her. In the late afternoon, Beatric found herself assigned to clean the drawing room. It was an extravagant space, its high ceilings adorned with intricate moldings and crystal chandeliers that cast shimmering patterns across the polished floors. Beatric worked diligently, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she dusted the ornate furniture and rearranged the countless decorative pieces. Then she heard it, a low murmur of voices outside the door. She instinctively froze, her fingers gripping the edge of a vase. The voices grew louder until the door swung open, revealing Andrew Collins and a striking woman dressed in an elegant crimson gown. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her sharp blue eyes sparkled with amusement. "Ah, Andrew," the woman drawled, her tone dripping with condescension. "You really should do something about the help. They're everywhere these days." Beatric quickly stepped back, lowering her gaze. Her heart raced as she kept her eyes on the floor, willing herself to disappear. "She's just doing her job, Danielle," Andrew replied dismissively. His tone lacked empathy, but it wasn't as cutting as before. He walked past Beatric without another glance, while Danielle eyed her like one might inspect a fly on the wall. "Well, I suppose even the finest estates need their cleaners," Danielle said with a smirk, her heels clicking loudly as she followed Andrew out of the room. Beatric felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She clenched her fists, willing herself not to cry. This was her reality, a world where people like Andrew and Danielle saw her as nothing more than a faceless worker, unworthy of dignity or respect. Yet, as painful as their disdain was, it only strengthened her resolve. She wouldn't let their arrogance define her. Later that evening, Beatric was tasked with organizing the library. The grand piano still stood in the corner, its glossy surface gleaming under the warm light. She hesitated as she walked past it, the memory of Andrew's reprimand fresh in her mind. But the pull of the instrument was too strong to resist. She sat down on the bench, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the keys. Taking a deep breath, she pressed down lightly, producing a soft, melancholic note. It was a simple sound, but it carried with it the weight of her emotions. Slowly, she began to play, her voice rising in harmony with the melody. Her song filled the room, a haunting blend of sorrow and hope. It was a reflection of her life, of the struggles that had shaped her and the dreams that refused to die. For a moment, she forgot about the grand estate, the cruel words, and the endless toil. She was lost in the music, her soul laid bare. Unbeknownst to her, Andrew stood in the doorway once again. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable as he watched her. The raw emotion in her voice struck him in a way he couldn't explain. It was as though her song peeled back the layers of his carefully constructed facade, exposing something he hadn't felt in years. "Why do you always do this?" Andrew's voice broke the spell, startling Beatric. She jumped to her feet, her face pale. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" he interrupted, stepping into the room. "Turn my library into your personal stage?" Beatric's eyes darted to the floor. I wanted to play. I won't do it again." Andrew studied her for a moment, his sharp gaze softening ever so slightly. "You have a talent," he said finally. "But talent alone won't take you far. Not in this world." Beatric looked up, surprised by his words. "Then what will?" Andrew smirked, his cold demeanor returning. "Connections, power, money, all the things you don't have." His words stung, but Beatric refused to let them crush her. Instead, she straightened her back and met his gaze. "Maybe. But I have something you don't." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Hope," she said simply, her voice steady. For a moment, Andrew looked taken aback. Then he let out a low chuckle. "We'll see how far that gets you." The following day, Beatric was stunned when she received an invitation to a charity gala at the Collins estate. The ornate envelope felt heavy in her hands, its golden lettering glinting in the light. She knew it wasn't a genuine gesture of kindness. Andrew and Danielle likely saw it as an opportunity to mock her, to remind her of her place. But Beatric wasn't about to back down. As she stood in front of the mirror that night, dressed in a borrowed gown that was slightly too big, she took a deep breath. Her reflection stared back at her, a mix of nerves and determination etched across her face. This was her chance, not just to prove herself, but to show Andrew, Danielle, and everyone else that she was more than what they assumed. With her head held high, she stepped into the grand ballroom, ready to face whatever awaited her. The grand ballroom of the Collins estate shimmered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in warm light, casting a golden glow on the crowd of elegantly dressed guests. The clinking of champagne glasses and the murmur of polite conversation created a symphony of wealth and privilege, a world far removed from anything Beatric had ever known. She stood near the entrance, feeling out of place in her borrowed gown. The dress, though simple, did little to conceal her discomfort as she scanned the room. Her hair, carefully tied into a loose bun, revealed her delicate features, but the glances from the other guests felt piercing. Whispers followed her every step, their voices laced with judgment. "Who invited her?" a woman in a sequin dress murmured to her companion. "Probably Andrew's idea," the man replied with a smirk. "Always one for a good laugh." Beatric clenched her fists at her sides, her nails digging into her palms. She could feel the heat rising to her cheeks, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. This was her chance to prove she belonged, no matter how unwelcome she was made to feel. At the center of the room, Andrew Collins stood with Danielle by his side. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored black tuxedo, his demeanor as aloof as ever. Danielle, in a dazzling silver gown, clung to his arm like a trophy, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Look who actually showed up," Danielle whispered to Andrew, nodding toward Beatric. Andrew's lips curled into a faint smirk. "I told you she would. Curiosity always gets the better of people like her." Danielle let out a soft laugh. "This will be entertaining." Andrew's gaze lingered on Beatric for a moment. Despite his outward disdain, he couldn't deny there was something about her, something unyielding and defiant that intrigued him, even if he refused to admit it. As the night went on, Beatric did her best to navigate the sea of unfamiliar faces. She avoided eye contact, focusing instead on the art and decor that adorned the room. But her reprieve was short-lived. A sudden hush fell over the crowd as Andrew stepped onto the small stage at the far end of the ballroom, a microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice commanding the attention of everyone present. "Thank you for joining us tonight. As you know, this gala is not only a celebration of generosity but also an opportunity to highlight hidden talents in our community." The guests murmured in curiosity, their eyes darting around the room. Andrew's gaze settled on Beatric. "And tonight, we have a very special guest among us. Someone who has a rather unique talent." Beatric's heart sank as every pair of eyes turned toward her. She felt the weight of their stares, the anticipation thick in the air. Andrew extended a hand toward her, his smirk widening. "Miss Beatric, would you do us the honor of sharing your gift with us?" The room erupted into polite applause, though the undertone of mockery was impossible to miss. Beatric's mind raced. She knew this was a trap, a cruel joke meant to humiliate her in front of everyone. But as she looked at Andrew's smug expression, a surge of determination coursed through her. If they wanted a performance, she would give them one they wouldn't forget. With slow, deliberate steps, Beatric made her way to the stage. The soft rustle of her gown was the only sound in the otherwise silent room. She took the microphone from Andrew, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted it. Her eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the sea of skeptical faces. Then, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The first note she sang was soft, almost hesitant, but as the melody built, her voice grew stronger. It was a song she had written herself, a hauntingly beautiful piece about resilience and hope. The lyrics poured out of her, raw and full of emotion, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. The audience was captivated. The mocking smiles faded, replaced by expressions of awe. Even Andrew, standing off to the side, looked genuinely stunned. Beatric's voice was unlike anything they had ever heard, powerful yet vulnerable, filled with a depth of emotion that resonated with everyone present. When the final note faded, the room erupted into thunderous applause. Beatric opened her eyes, tears brimming as she took in the standing ovation before her. For the first time that evening, she felt like she belonged. As Beatric stepped off the stage, a man approached her. He was tall and well-dressed, his silver hair and kind eyes giving him an air of wisdom. "Miss Beatric," he said, extending a hand. "My name is Jack Mitchell. I'm a music producer, and I must say, your performance was extraordinary." Beatric hesitated, unsure of what to say. Jack smiled warmly. "I'd like to help you develop your talent. With a voice like yours, you could go far." The offer was like a dream come true, but before Beatric could respond, Danielle appeared, her face twisted in disbelief. "You're kidding, right?" she scoffed. "She's just a maid." Jack turned to Danielle, his expression cool. "Talent knows no class, Mississippi. And what I just witnessed was something remarkable." Danielle's jaw tightened, but she said nothing as Jack turned back to Beatric. "Think about it," he said, handing her a business card. "I'll be in touch." That night, as Beatric walked home, the card clutched tightly in her hand, she felt a spark of hope unlike anything she'd ever known. For the first time, her dreams felt within reach. She had faced humiliation and come out stronger, proving not just to others but to herself that she was capable of more than they ever expected. Little did she know, this night would mark the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The days following the gala were a whirlwind for Beatric. Jack Mitchell's business card had become her most prized possession, a symbol of hope she carried everywhere. She spent hours debating whether to call him, afraid it might all be too good to be true. But every time she remembered the standing ovation and the look of disbelief on Danielle's face, courage swelled within her. Finally, with trembling hands, she dialed the number. Jack Mitchell speaking, came the warm, steady voice on the other end. Beatric hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Beatric. We met at the Collins Gala." "Beatric." Jack's voice brightened instantly. "I've been waiting for your call. I meant every word I said. Your talent is extraordinary, and I'd love to help you develop it." Beatric's chest tightened with a mix of excitement and fear. "I'm not sure I can afford." Jack interrupted gently. "This isn't about money, Beatric. It's about giving a voice to someone who deserves to be heard. Meet me at my studio tomorrow, and we'll discuss everything." The studio was unlike anything Beatric had ever seen. Walls lined with gold records and photographs of famous artists gleamed under soft lighting. Jack greeted her with a warm smile, guiding her to the recording booth. "Sing the same song you performed at the gala," he said, his tone encouraging. Nervously, Beatric stepped up to the microphone. As she sang, the rich sound of her voice filled the room. Jack listened intently, nodding as if confirming what he already knew. Beatric was a star in the making. When she finished, Jack leaned forward, his eyes shining. "Beatric, you have something rare. With the right guidance, you can reach millions. Are you ready for that?" Beatric swallowed hard. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted. "But I want to try." Jack smiled. "That's all I need to hear." As weeks turned into months, Beatric worked tirelessly. Her days were still filled with cleaning houses to make ends meet, but her nights were spent at the studio, pouring her soul into every note she sang. Jack's mentorship was firm but kind, pushing her to unlock depths of emotion she hadn't known she possessed. Word of Beatric's talent began to spread. Jack introduced her to influential figures in the music industry, and soon she was performing at small events, each time leaving the audience in awe. Yet, as her star began to rise, the shadows of her past loomed over her. One evening, as Beatric left the studio, she was startled to see Andrew Collins waiting outside. Dressed casually for once, he looked different, less intimidating, almost vulnerable. "Beatric," he began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "I wanted to talk." She crossed her arms, her guard instantly up. "What do you want, Mr. Collins?" Andrew sighed, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I owe you an apology. For how I treated you, for what happened at the gala. I was wrong." Beatric studied him, searching for any trace of insincerity. "Why now?" she asked. "What changed?" Andrew looked away, his jaw tightening. "Watching you on that stage, it made me realize how small-minded I've been. You have something I'll never have, real talent, real heart. I just wanted you to know that." His words were unexpected, and for a moment, Beatric didn't know how to respond. But then she nodded, her voice steady. "Thank you, Mr. Collins. I appreciate that." Andrew smiled faintly. "Good luck, Beatric. Not that you'll need it." Despite the apology, not everyone was as supportive. Danielle, furious at Andrew's change of heart and jealous of Beatric's growing success, began spreading rumors about her past. Whispers of the maid-turned-singer and rags to riches cliché followed Beatric wherever she went. At first, the cruel words hurt, reopening old wounds. But Jack reminded her of the power of her voice. "Let them talk," he said. The truth is in your music. Beatric poured her pain into her songs, her voice carrying the weight of her struggles and triumphs. Her debut single, aptly titled Rising from the Ashes, became an instant hit, resonating with audiences around the world. Critics praised not just her vocal talent but the raw emotion that made every performance unforgettable. One evening, as she sat in the modest apartment she still shared with her mother, Beatric received a letter. It was from Andrew Collins. Inside was a simple note. Your music changed my life. Thank you for reminding me of what truly matters. Accompanying the note was a donation receipt for a generous sum made in Beatric's name to a foundation supporting underprivileged artists. Beatric held the letter close, her eyes welling with tears. For so long, she had dreamed of proving herself, of breaking free from the chains of her circumstances. Now, she realized that her journey wasn't just about her. It was about inspiring others to believe in the power of hope, resilience, and the courage to chase their dreams. And this was only the beginning. Months turned into a year, and Beatric's life transformed in ways she could have never imagined. Her debut album, Rising from the Ashes, climbed the charts, its heartfelt lyrics and soulful melodies touching the hearts of millions. Each song told a story, of struggle, of hope, and of finding strength in the face of adversity. It was more than music, it was a testament to her journey, a gift to those who listened. But fame came with its own set of challenges. The spotlight was relentless, and with every achievement came scrutiny. Rumors about her past resurfaced, amplified by those who envied her success. Danielle's venomous comments found their way into tabloid headlines, painting Beatric as an opportunist who had capitalized on her sob story to gain fame. Beatric, however, remained undeterred. She faced the criticism with the same resilience that had carried her through the darkest days of her life. Every insult, every doubt only fueled her determination to prove that she was more than what people assumed. Her music became her voice, louder and more powerful than any detractor. One evening, Beatric stood backstage at her first sold-out concert. The roar of the crowd was deafening, their cheers echoing through the cavernous arena. She looked in the mirror, her reflection a far cry from the timid maid who had once been mocked for dreaming too big. Her gown shimmered under the lights, her eyes sparkled with determination, and her voice, oh, her voice, was ready to change lives. As the announcer called her name, Beatric stepped onto the stage. The sight before her was breathtaking, thousands of fans holding up lights, their faces glowing with anticipation. She took a deep breath and began to sing. The first note silenced the crowd, drawing them into the raw emotion of her performance. Each word resonated, her voice carrying a message of hope and perseverance to every corner of the room. Halfway through the concert, Beatric paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience. This next song, she said, her voice steady but emotional, is dedicated to anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong. To those who faced hardship, rejection, or doubt. I want you to know, you are enough. You are capable of more than you realize. The crowd erupted in cheers, many wiping away tears. Beatric smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She knew this was why she sang, not for fame, but for connection. For the chance to remind others that they weren't alone. Meanwhile, Andrew Collins watched the concert from the comfort of his modest apartment. His life had changed dramatically since Beatric's rise to fame. The collapse of his business had forced him to reassess his priorities, and Beatric's success had been a humbling reminder of the power of kindness and perseverance. As her voice filled the room, Andrew felt a pang of regret for the way he had treated her, but also a sense of pride. In some small way, he had been a part of her journey. Backstage after the concert, Jack Mitchell approached Beatric, his smile wide. "You did it, kid," he said, clapping her on the shoulder. "This is just the beginning." Beatric laughed softly, her voice tinged with disbelief. "I still can't believe this is real." Jack's expression turned serious. "It's real, Beatric. You've earned every bit of this. But remember, success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about how you use it. Don't forget where you came from. Beatric nodded, his words striking a chord. She thought of her mother, of the long days spent cleaning houses, of the people who had doubted her and the few who had believed in her. She vowed to use her platform to lift others, to give back to the community that had shaped her. In the weeks that followed, Beatric launched a foundation to support underprivileged artists, providing scholarships, mentorship, and opportunities for those who shared her dreams but lacked the means to pursue them. The foundation became her way of honoring her journey, of giving others the chance she had fought so hard to find. One day, as Beatric prepared to leave her office, a knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Andrew Collins standing there, looking nervous. He held a bouquet of simple daisies, her favorite, though he couldn't have known, and an envelope. I wanted to thank you, Andrew said, his voice unsteady. For the inspiration, for the forgiveness. And for showing me what really matters. Beatric smiled softly, taking the flowers. Thank you, Mr. Collins. But the forgiveness wasn't just for you, it was for me, too. Andrew nodded, his expression one of genuine gratitude. As he turned to leave, Beatric called after him. Take care of yourself, Andrew. And don't be afraid to start over. Years later, as Beatric stood on stage accepting a prestigious music award, she thought back to the journey that had brought her here. The struggles, the pain, the moments of doubt, they had all been worth it. Looking out at the cheering crowd, she smiled, her heart full. Her final words to the audience were simple yet powerful: dreams don't come true because of where you start, they come true because of where you choose to go. Never stop choosing to move forward. And with that, Beatric walked off the stage, ready to continue her journey, knowing the best was yet to come. Beatric's journey reminds us all of the power of dreams, resilience, and unwavering hope. From the humble beginnings of cleaning houses to standing on the world's greatest stages, she proved that it's not where you start, but how determined you are to keep going. Her story is a testament to the idea that no matter how many obstacles life throws at you, your passion and perseverance can lead you to places beyond your imagination. This is more than a tale of triumph over adversity, it's a call to action for everyone who has ever doubted their worth or felt the weight of the world pressing down on their shoulders. Beatric's courage teaches us to rise above the judgments of others, to forgive not just for their sake but for our own peace, and to use our success to uplift those around us. What about you? What dream have you been holding back, waiting for the right moment to pursue? Let Beatric's journey inspire you to take that first step today. Remember, you are capable of more than you know, and the world is waiting to hear your voice. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that dreams are worth chasing. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we share incredible stories like Beatric's, stories of hope, resilience, and the power of believing in yourself. Click that subscribe button and join us on this journey of inspiration and transformation. Let's make the world a better place, one story at a time.